Okay, so we're taking a look at some of the Chapter 4 elements here, which is the introduction to some of the drawing tools. So the line tool, right, is the easiest. So I'm going to left click on the line tool. Line tool, I'm going to follow the prompts. Left click to start a point is one of the easiest. Drag your mouse and left click to set a secondary point. This is a continuous command. So in other words, when you are when you're done, it's going to continue asking you what is the next point after the point you just placed. So you can continue clicking. And of course, you can use coordinates or type in specific values. So I'm going to type in a value of 6 and hit enter. And I'm going to hit escape to get out of that line tool. Very simple, very easy to do. You can also use the line tool for coordinates. So for instance, if I have a very specific coordinate, I'm going to place it in, let's do 10, comma 10 and hit enter. So 10, comma 10 is this point right over here. There you go. And now I can create a second point by entering another coordinate. So this time I'm going to do, let's do 15, comma, and it'll jump to doing the y-axis. Let's do, how about 8, and hit enter. Okay. So you can draw a line using coordinates. And looking back at my history, if I bring this up, then it did do a relative coordinate. Okay, so it did at 15, comma 8. So that's why it went up. In case you weren't expecting it to go downwards, that's why. All right, so next set, actually I'm just going to do the line one more time, and I'm going to create just very simple mountains just to show you the polyline. Okay, so I'm going to now draw with the polyline. So I'm going to choose polyline, and I'm going to create similar looking mountains, just like so, and hitting escape to get out of it. Now, they look the same, right? So the top here is a polyline, the bottom is using the line tool. So what's the difference looking at them? Nothing. Okay. However, hovering over it, only one of these line segments light up. All right. So if you hover over, only one of the segments light up, which means that if you click to select it, only that line segment will highlight and become selected. So the difference now, I'm going to hit escape. The difference here is that as you hover over a polyline, the entire drawing or that single effort of line segments that you drew is all one thing. So if you click on any segment, the entire thing lights up. Okay, so that's one of the main differences between polyline versus line. Now, drawing in the beginning shouldn't really matter too much. Later on, as you get into advanced concepts, it will make a difference whether you're drawing in polyline or line. So another thing with polyline, I'm going to click on polyline here, is after I select a point, you'll notice down in the command line that there are options that you can now use to create additional effects, if you will. So I'm going to type on W for width and hit enter. And it's asking me down in the command line to specify a starting width. So I'm just going to say 1 and hit enter. And specify an ending width. All right. So again, if you're looking down below in the command line, specify an end width now. I'm going to say 5 and hit enter to confirm that. And you'll notice that now as I drag my line, and let me make my line 15 inches, type in 15 and hit enter. And it is a continuous line. Right? I'm going to hit escape to get out of that. but you'll notice that the starting width was 1 and the ending width was 5. So you can add thickness to polylines, which is something that you can't really do with regular lines so much. So that makes this really interesting. And you can do the same thing with using the polyline tool again and creating a start point. And I can jump over to arc down on the bottom, or I type A for arc and hit enter. And now you can see that I can create this arc, and I can do the same thing with radius. I can change the width, all sorts of options. So I'm just going to left click here, and maybe left click here because I'm drawing something pretty interesting. I don't want to continue anymore, so I'm going to hit escape. But there are options down on the bottom in the command line that give you additional drawing options, or to create specific events to control the actual shape of each polyline and polyline segment. So that's polylines. And I'm going to erase this now. Hit delete. Next, we're going to talk about circle, or the circle tool. So by default, the center radius option is what is being used. So basically it says to specify the center point of the circle. So left click and then drag it out. And then from here, you're going to enter the radius, right? So the radius is the center of the circle out to the edge of the circle. All right. So, and that's that yellow dotted line that you sort of see, that 3.2627 that you see currently on my screen. So I'm just going to change it to 4 and hit enter. So that means from the center to the edge, right? Center to the edge, center to the edge, center to the edge, doesn't really matter, is always going to be a radius of 4, right? Which means the diameter going all the way across and through the center will be 8, right? So, and that's actually the second option, is to use a center diameter circle. So if I left click to start my circle, drag out my mouse, and it says specify diameter, and I'm going to say 8 and enter. And you'll notice that they're both the same. So where students make mistakes is sometimes they're using the wrong circle tool, or they're entering a diameter when it should be a radius, or a radius when it should be a diameter. So make sure that you're paying attention to those options. All right, other options, a 2-point circle. This is more really using 2 points. So click 1, click 2, and it gives you a circle there. 3-point, if you guess, is the same thing. So 1, 2, and depending on your third, you can create a circle using 3 points. The other option that gets used often is tan radius, or tangent radius. So with tangent radius, it allows me to place a circle that is touching in 2 different places. Okay, so I have 2 circles here, but it could be a line, it could be something completely not circular. So I'm just going to left click here, and I'm going to left click on this edge here, and then I'm going to specify a radius. I'm going to say the radius should be, let's do 10, and I'm going to hit enter. So I kind of made this little Mickey Mouse type thing. And again, when you're picking your points for tangent radius, so again, if you're not familiar with tangent means that it touches in one place. Okay, so the circle is touching the smaller circle in one precise location, and it's doing the same thing here. So, and you can probably zoom in, and it'll take you a while to actually get to that 1 point, but it is there. And the thing is when you're looking for tangent points, you may be trying to figure out, well, where exactly do I click for that tangent point? And the honest answer is you're not going to be able to tell until all the information is there. So in other words, I need to click once anywhere in the general area where I think it's going to be, and then in the general area where I think it's going to be on the second circle or on the second line or whatever that next tangent point is. And then once you specify a radius, then it will decide where those tangent points need to be based on the math and based on all the information that you input. So when you're doing tangent, tangent, radius, it's, let's do it over here. I can click towards the bottom and I can click towards the bottom here, but if I have a small enough radius, let's do 4. All right, then that radius moved up a little bit. Let me undo that, and I'm going to do it one more time. So I'm going to go towards the bottom, tangent mark towards the bottom. This time, let's do a radius of 1, and you can see that the tangent points have moved up. All right, that's all based on the information that you give it. So it doesn't really matter where you click. It does in some cases if the circle is going the wrong way. You can sort of control that with where you click, but for the most part, clicking anywhere in the general vicinity of where you think that circle is going to go is where you need to click. Last option here is tan, 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 or tangent, tangent, tangent. So that means that I have 3 tangent points. Again, arbitrarily pick, and it will figure out all the math on its own. So 1, 2, and 3, and it created a circle that touches all three selections. Okay, so you can do the same thing with lines. We'll create a little line segment here, and if I do tangent, 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 I will select anywhere on the line, anywhere on the line, anywhere on the line, and it creates a circle that touches those lines at 3 distinct points based on the information given. All right, so that is circle, the circle tool. I'm going to erase this. And next is the arc tool. So the arc tool, again, has a drop down, so it has a lot of options actually. 3-point and starting, center, and end. And each of these commands it has to do with how it's being drawn. So it's still an arc, but it all has to do with how it's being drawn. So if you're choosing center, start, end, well, that's the order that you create your arc. You choose a center point, then you choose a start point, then you choose the ending point, and it'll create that arc for you. For the simplest, it's going to be the 3-point arc. I click on 3-point arc, specify the start point, so I'm going to left click, and I'm going to specify a second point, which I'll place out here, left click, and then specify an end. So this is all going to be based on where my mouse is and where I click. So I'm going to left click out here, and that's my 3-point arc. I don't use arcs too much, but so I don't use arcs too often. I prefer to use circles and then kind of trim things away, trim things out, just because sometimes the arcs seem a little bit difficult and challenging to to produce exactly what you want. But just I'm not going to go through every single one of these, but let's do start, center, end. So this would be the case where you specify the starting point of an arc, and then you would pick a center point of the arc, and then based on that you can control the swing, right? That's known as the swing. And I'm going to say, let's say 50 degrees. I'll type that in and hit enter, right? So going 50 degrees up, that's where it ends. Okay, so again, even though you can do the left click method, obviously it's better if you're using precise dimensions and precise values. So at any point in time, obviously you can control these arcs. Let's say 0, 0, 0, 0, and specifying the central point of the arc. I'm going to say it's 9 inches away. I'm going to hit enter, and then of course you can say, well, yeah, let's do it at 130 degrees, and there's that swing. So a lot of things to think about. There is one additional option here at the very bottom, which is to continue, and with the continue it kind of acts like a 3-point curve, and you can even create these ogee curves, which is basically like a reverse curve turning in on itself, which is kind of neat. So those are the arc options. And let's get rid of this. Hit the delete key. Next is going to be rectangle tool. And the rectangle tool is pretty simple. So either using dimensions or first left clicking to start placing that, then you can grow that rectangle in whichever direction you need it to go. If you need to be more specific, well, then you're going to be placing, let's do 10. It looks like my computer froze. There we go. Let me do that again. My computer froze on me a little bit. So left click to pick a first corner, drag it out. I can add values, let's say 10 for the X, and let's go 20 for the Y. And you'll notice that the actual rectangle right now is kind of doing its own thing. So don't be freaked out if you're not getting the exact shape that you want as you're entering commands. Okay, so make sure you finish through the command and hit enter before you see what's happening, because it can be very easy and very frustrating that after you input your X value and you're working on your Y, it does something completely crazy, and it doesn't look anything all like what it's supposed to. So make sure you finish the command. Okay, rectangle tool one more time. Now there are additional options. Again, with many commands, there are additional options in the command line. So you can practice with those. So for instance, the fillet command, I'm going to choose F for fillet and specify the fillet radius for the rectangles, and I'm going to enter the value of 1 and hit enter. And now my first corner point, and I'm dragging, and you can see I'm going to left click again to secure that corner. It automatically places rounds on all 4 corners of my rectangle. So very convenient. And again, there are other options here for thickness and width, similar to polyline issues. The chamfer even. So with the chamfer, if you don't know what a chamfer is, it's kind of like lopping off the corner of something. And I'll do a 2 this time. And the second chamfer distance, yeah, we'll make it all 45-degree angles. So now if I draw my rectangle, you can see that all the corners are lopped off. And basically the 2 value means it's 2 inches from this particular point here to where it would typically intersect. And then the second leg, which is why it asked me a second time, is again this corner to where it would intersect. So where the corner would be or should be, that's the distance of each leg. So 2 inches this way, 2 inches that way. And they do that for all 4. And again, the radius on this one is basically going to be somewhere in here. All right, that's the 1 inch radius. So 1 inch from this curve to the center of that arc. All right, that's the rectangle tool. Hidden behind the rectangle tool is the polygon tool. So click on the polygon tool, and the first thing it's going to ask you is how many sides. So you can go anywhere from I think 3 to, I haven't tested what's the highest number, but definitely starting at 3. So usually you'll do this with any kind of polygon, pentagons, hexagons, heptagons, octagons, those kinds of things. So you would basically say, okay, let's do 6-sided, right, hexagon. Hit enter to confirm. And the polygon tool acts like a circle. So you need to specify a center point. So I'm just going to left click here. And then we have this option. So we have 2 options on how to create our polygon. And it doesn't matter how many sides it has, but you're always going to get asked, is it inscribed or circumscribed? And they actually changed the language in this, so now it makes a little bit more sense if you're not familiar. Inscribed in the circle or circumscribed about the circle. And the easiest way, inscribed, use the word in the word inscribed to say that it's inside the circle, and circumscribed is the other way, which is outside of the circle. So what does that mean exactly? Well, Inscribed in the circle means that I'm going to be controlling the point of that polygon. So you'll see that my mouse or my cursor is controlling the point of that hexagon. All right, so I can move that point anywhere I want to. So my dimension is going to be from the center of the polygon to the vertex or to the point. So I'm going to left click, and that's an inscribed polygon. If I do it one more time, 6 sides again, hit enter, specify the center right there, and this time we're going to use circumscribed. So now instead of the point, we're going to be controlling the midpoint of the flat area. So circumscribed, and now you can see that my cursor is at the midpoint of the flat. So usually when you see dimensions, they'll be from flat to flat. So this is a good option to use for those. And the interesting thing is I'm going to left click to set it. Depending on the radius, right? If you use the same radius for an inscribed polygon versus a circumscribed polygon, the sizes will be different. All right, so you'll have one object that's a little bit larger, one that's a little bit smaller. So it does make a difference which one you use. Okay, so inscribed, you're controlling the point, and circumscribed, you're controlling the midpoint of the flat. And those are polygons. All right, next on our list is the ellipse tool. So the ellipse tool has a mini drop down, and it has 3 different versions. You can create a center ellipse, an axis end ellipse, and an elliptical arc. So again, I usually go with the main one, the center ellipse. So it acts similar to a circle where you need to specify the center point. So left click or put in a coordinate. And then you have 2 axes basically. So if I go on the y-axis, I'm going to left click, and then I specify my x-axis. You can see what's happening to this ellipse, and I'm going to left click there. So multiple clicks, and you can even do this on an angle if you wish. So there's my center point, and I'm going to say my first axis is going to be here, and my second axis will be perpendicular to that. So I'm going to left click there. And that's as easy as it gets working with ellipses. Okay, delete that. Now they do have a couple of other things listed in the chapter. I'm not going to go over hatching yet. That's going to be a little bit later on. But if you click on the drop down arrow for the drawing tools, you can still see that there's a host of drawing tools, not as widely used. That's why they're kind of hidden down here. But they can be very helpful. The first 2 are splines. So a spline fit versus a spline control vertice or CV. And you can swap between the 2 after you draw them. Working with splines, either one of those 2 icons takes a little bit getting used to, but I would first say do a single click, then a second click, and based on your third click, you can kind of control the curve. So I'm going to click here, click, click, click. So the more clicks you have, the more you can control that particular spline. And a spline is basically a free-form curve. And then whenever you're done, hit the enter key, and you've got yourself a spline. Okay, so splines don't really work with dimensions because it is a free-form curve. It is constantly changing. Get rid of that. The next one, or next 2 actually, could be helpful. We can use these for construction lines. So there is a construction line. The next one is a ray. They are both kind of the same. The construction line basically goes in 2 directions, while the ray goes in a singular direction. So let's do a ray first, which is the second option there. So I'm going to specify a start point, left click, and then I'm just going to lead my mouse in whatever direction, and it's going to create an infinite ray. Okay, so if I left click on this Let me change over to 45-degree angle. Type in 45 and hit enter. And then it's continuous, right? It's still asking me, well, what other rays do you want to place? So I'm going to hit escape. And so this is what a ray looks like from your start point. And you can zoom out and you will never see the other end of it because it goes on forever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever. And it's helpful to use as a construction line. And speaking of construction line, we'll do a construction line here. So I'm going to pick the construction line tool, or X line is the keyboard shortcut. And I'm going to pick a point here. And again, moving my mouse, you can see that it creates an infinite line in both directions. And it's helpful if you have your ortho on for this one, if you wanted to create some sort of grid system. So I left click to set it, and then I can move my mouse to the left or to the right. I'm going to left click to set that one. Then I'm going to take F8 off. And if I needed to, I can create, additional construction lines. And when I'm done, just hit escape or enter. And again, zooming out, those construction lines and or rays will go on forever and ever and ever. But helpful if you need a set of scaffolding tools or building blocks to help you draw your geometry. So I'm just going to window over these and zoom back in a little bit. And I think one of the final ones that the book talks about anyways is the donut, which is an interesting little tool. Donut specify the inner diameter, right? Basically, it's just following the prompt. So the inner diameter, yeah, let's keep it at 1/2 inch. I hit enter to confirm. Outside of the donut, it will be 1 inch. Sure, let's hit enter to confirm. And then specify the center point. And there is our donut. And I can left click again, and again, and again, and again. Now, this is an interesting little thing that popped up. I'm going to hit escape. So you notice that there's a difference between the first one that I placed and the next ones that I placed. That's because I was kind of zoomed out, and the resolution from far away, it showed a circle, a proper circle. And as I zoomed in, the resolution basically got stuck, and by the time I zoomed in, then the rest of them kind of caught up and could be placed no problem. So how do we fix this? There's a keyboard shortcut called regen or regen all. So we're going to type that in, REGENALL, and it'll basically refresh the screen and redraw that. So I hit enter, and it fixes that resolution issue. So if you see something that's a little bit pixelated or funky or not the way that it's supposed to be, type in regen all and hit enter, and that should fix it. If it doesn't fix it, then there's another issue. But this is how you can create donuts with different diameters, inner diameters and outer diameters. And that is all of the drawing tools.